All right. So that brings us to Star Wars. It's crazy. It's crazy to me. I mean, we took 2 weeks off, but I'm just like, man, we're just coming off of one thing, and I was listening to some reviews of Ahsoka before we got on tonight, and they were bringing up how Mandalorian had happened earlier this year. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I really like this show. I'm not going to say I really like this show. I'm going to say I really like the way they started, because we all know these shows can often go downhill the moment we get on board. So, which I don't think is going to happen. But honestly, it felt like a Star Wars movie. Yeah. It felt like these characters, I know a lot of fans, people who have watched Rebels, know these characters already, know what's going on, all the backstory. I'm coming in fresh. I still was like, okay, I'm on board. I see what's going on. They didn't spoon feed things to the audience, but they also did not let me have these 5 characters each give different, 5 different monologues to explain all of this stuff. No, it was so simple. But it was also entertaining. It was simple yet entertaining. And there were hints about the lore and the connective tissues and the bigger picture. And we know Filoni's playing a long game. I hear all about it in the reviews I listen to. But at the end of the day, it's just, it's a really good, strong start to a show, to bring you into this world, to introduce these characters or refamiliarize fans with these characters in this sense. And it's beautiful. It's very well shot. The CGI on fucking point. Yeah, I really like it, and I can only sum it up to be like, it was so simple, but it was entertaining, and that's really hard to do, especially in this genre.
It is. Wow. So I was really wanted to hear your thoughts on it, because like you said, you haven't watched Rebels or Clone Wars, and so I was hearing you say that means that Filoni hit it, at least for you as you casual Star Wars fan, he mission accomplished.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, because I mean, for me, having watched Rebels and Clone Wars, I agree with you. The cinematography, I mean, the moment we got the crawl.
Yes.
I was like, okay, we're back in freaking Star Wars land. I didn't realize how much I missed the crawl. Right? I mean, I know it wasn't like the traditional crawl, like we've seen in the episodes.
It was a crawl.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just that. They pan up to a spaceship.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, which is another classic opening moment. Like, you get the crawl, then you get the pan up, the music, everything about the opening sequence was just like, oh my God, this is refreshing, yet nostalgic, yet it works. Like it's totally what I think. It's something that anyone who has been tuning in to these Star Wars shows has been looking for. Yes, we want something new, we want something different, and or filled that. Yet simultaneously, now Ahsoka is filling this but the familiarity. You got your difference. This is more familiar, but better.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree with you there. Cause it was just those moments like the crawl, moments like, with the New Hope vibes, with the ships, the panning, all those kind of things. For me I will say, as much as I enjoyed it, I wasn't blown away other
Right.
than, I wasn't. I'm just going to be honest. I
Yep.
enjoyed the 2 episodes. They did what they needed to do to fill in the gaps for casual Star Wars fan who, and and do think that there were some, like, we'll talk a little bit more about, like, for example, how Ahsoka was as far as her, what I'm used to seeing her from Rebels and from Clone Wars versus how she's appeared in live action. So, so there is those kind of things that, that I think that's what kept it from blowing me away, because I do feel like a lot of times either was by directing choice or the way Rosario's playing Ahsoka at this point. I did feel a little like that cold aloofness from it that did take me out of it just a little. I don't want to say take me out is the right word, but it did, like, completely, and I think some people have called it pacing issues.
So I guess,
But for me, yeah, I don't think it was a pacing issue for me. I actually like the way that the story was paced, but I do feel like it was just like I couldn't feel like I could get an attachment to Ahsoka in live action than I say have had with that character before. Same with Sabine, same with Hera, because I'm used to them from, I just, fresh off a rewatch with my wife, she just finished watching all of Rebels. So still Rebels is fresh in my head right now. And so some of those vibes, I was like, that's what I was missing. And that's what kept me from completely being like, that blew me away, because that emotional connection that I had with those characters from the animated didn't translate completely for me into live action as of yet. There were moments where we had it, but not all, but there were other points where I was just like, just felt a little cold.
Right. No, that makes sense. And yeah, I would agree. That's not a pacing issue. Pacing issue is when you're thinking the whole episode felt poorly paced, not just a character, themselves. But, I can understand that, because it's anytime a character, and I know Ahsoka's beloved. I know Ahsoka is Filoni's crown jewel. And people are very protective of that character.
Yep.
So I actually don't think it's a bad thing. I think that's just is very telling to, here's the thing. It's interesting because earlier this year we talked about, I don't know if anybody has heard of the show, The Last of Us. People who played that game, believe it or not, some of them don't like the show because of their attachment to those characters in the game. So,
that's a great analogy. Because I think that's exactly what we're seeing here.
Yeah. Now it's just, and then I used to be an avid book reader, and I would often read books that would be moved to movies. Same thing, where it's just like, that's not the character I knew. It's hard. However, I do think, like, to your point, there were glimmers. So, and we're just getting started. I think it's I agree. I wasn't blown away by this. I just thought it was very entertaining.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like a slog. It felt like we were starting something while at the same time being plopped in the middle of something, which is great.
Yeah.
It felt like I could check my phone and I wouldn't miss like 5 different name drops of people who I'm not going to remember, because the dialogue was like so easy to follow, which has been a problem for me with a lot of these Star Wars shows. Like the monologues, the name drops and the planet references, like, no. Just give me a witch. And, okay, I'm going to call it right now, okay? There better be a fucking Charmed crossover happening. Because the Charmed back in the day was amazing, okay? The power of 3, okay? So first, she's like 3 figures, and then looking at the star map, and I see it, and I'm like, oh my god, that is Charmed. The Hollowell sisters are canon in Star Wars. Hallelujah. And she's a witch. It makes all the sense in the world.
It makes all the sense. Hey, there's trinities everywhere. I mean, there's trinities in Star Wars, and there's trinities in Charmed. So there you go.
So good.
Yeah, but that's right. I mean, that's the cool thing about like the lore stuff, because that's where, for me, seeing it, like when Ahsoka was in the search of the map on that planet, and we see the 3 sisters, and so Dr. Miller and the map and those kind of things. That's where I was just like, like the familiarity. I mean, there's things there for me as, for like what I got out when I saw those like moments at Andor. They were organic to the story Easter eggs.
Yes.
That you did, that didn't need, like, whereas I felt like Obi-Wan just threw shit there just for the sake of doing it. Where here is like, this has a purpose, and to get to this MacGuffin, which was the map.
Right. Well, I think a better analogy with Obi-Wan, it felt like, we're going to tell you this story that you keep clamoring on being told, and not do anything interesting with it. Not really explore the more dramatic. But with this show, and I didn't really catch on to it. I'm sorry, I'm a bit slow. But yeah, we're introduced to quote unquote potential Sith right in the beginning.
So,
but people have pointed out those lightsabers aren't red. They're orange.
That's right. They're dark.
But the way we're introduced to them, there's a moment where you're just like, are they Jedi?
Yeah.
It's such a good presence, and I love, again, I knew Filoni, like, just the title of the episodes works so well.
Yes, Master and Apprentice, yeah.
And then Total Trouble.
Yeah, exactly. And I love, that's one of the things also I think they did well with carrying some things over, in this New Republic timeline, and showing, like, we saw it in Mandalorian season 3, but I think they did it even better here whenever Baylor and Shin came on with the fake Jedi code, it checks out, and how the hubris of the New Republic, like, we are the confident New Republic because we kicked the Empire's ass, so we can do whatever we want. And he got his ass handed to him. And you're right. I mean, I like how they introduced them, where you have these orange Jedis, and you're like, oh, these orange lightsabers, and you're like, wait a minute. I thought the Sith were all destroyed, and it's clear they're not Sith, but I think that it expands. Filoni he's really big into expanding the Force lore.
Yeah.
In his stories as well. I mean, he did it all through Rebels. He did it during Clone Wars. So this is another extension of that. And showing these dark Jedi, or fallen Jedi.
Fallen Jedi, which Ahsoka is in some ways a fallen Jedi. And so what they've started is a great parallel where we're not getting this mustache twirling villain of like, oh, I'm going to build a Death Star because 5 other people haven't thought about that idea and execute. No. They didn't show that. They just showed a different, in wake of the New Republic, a different master and apprentice. Yeah. Who are serving a witch, and who are,
who's also Force sensitive.
Yeah, who are on the hunt for more power, for some reason, but also have a code, because I really like that last line that Balin says, like, to kill her would be a waste. Yeah. And that's the truth. Like, there's something about Balin where, he may be headed to the dark side, but he still has this code, and that's why his saber isn't red, it's orange. Like, he wants power. I like the line about greed. Like, that's not loyalty, it's greed. I think the dialogue was not forced. There was a lot of subtext. There was a lot of setting the stage for where we are and what's to come, while not trying to, like, give a philosophy lecture about war and politics. Because
like in the second episode, whenever they are on Corellia and they are, and Hera and Ahsoka are talking, and, you know, and I think somebody references, you know, you guys are talking the politics and stuff, but it wasn't like the stilted politics that we saw in the prequels. It was just the natural, like, here's where things stand at this point with this Imperial sympathizer. Well, we learned that he's an Imperial sympathizer, you know, because he's looking out for his investors, and it does go back to the greed. You know, at the end of the day, you know, everybody has their motivations, and it's not necessarily, you know, it's not necessarily become Force users or whatever. It's about profit. And even thinking to the sequel trilogy, I mean, that, you know, I think, you know, that gets carried forward with some of the war. You know, people are profiting from the war. We see that Canto Bright and other places like that in the Star Wars universe, where, you know, you have this military industrial complex, and that's what, you know, that's what a lot of these folks who are former Imperials are missing, because their gravy trains have been, like, cut off as far as their rich lifestyles. And, you know, and especially when you think back to, like, Andor, you see in the Old Republic, in the Old Republic, and the Imperial, and also the Imperial period. And I think about that planet, where the Imperial base was at, and they had the big gold reserve and that kind of stuff. And the lavish lifestyle. And I remember the Imperial soldier, you know, really wanting that promotion so he could get off that planet to a bigger, you know, thing. As his motivations were, you know, again, greed. And so I think I like that they're showing why, because of, you know, they're showing, like, all the mistakes that the New Republic is making, and really setting the stage. You know, this period is really setting the stage for showing how the First Order comes into power in the sequel trilogy. So I think a lot of things Filoni's doing here is, you know, and I think the idea is that I think this show is working its way towards his movie to show the rise of the First Order and stuff. And it's really laying that groundwork, what we see on Corellia with the, whenever they're when they're building the hyperdrive, so that, Morgan can get to the next galaxy.
Yeah. Through her, Eye of Sion.
Yeah.
Which, come on, like, where's the Lord of the Rings crossover now? I mean,
yeah, for real.
I still need to finish the first season, but I could, as soon as I heard that, I'm like, it's gonna cross over Lord of the Rings.
We got all these crossovers, yeah.
Why? Why?
Potential crossovers for sure. Potential crossovers. But, you know, another thing that, you know, I know that with, you know, you're talking about titles and Master and Apprentice and Ahsoka and Sabine, and also how this all ties back into Anakin. And also even ties into why, you know, it gives us more context for why, given that her training of Sabine somehow failed, and why Ahsoka was so reluctant to train Grogu whenever we see them in Mando season 2, was that Book of Boba Fett? They started to run together after a while, but that relationship there, but also I think Ahsoka is feeling some of the responsibility. Like I don't know responsibility, but she's definitely feeling like if she hadn't left the Jedi Order after all what transpired at the end of Clone Wars, would have Anakin would have, maybe she could have been the backstop to keep him from going full Sith if she hadn't
Right. She has
away.
Guilt.
She has a lot of guilt. Yeah.
She's a martyr. She's the female version of Obi-Wan, but better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And from a different perspective because she was Anakin's Padawan, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then she ended up leaving, not getting herself fully trained, which makes sense for her to then find herself in the position of having a Padawan. Well, I never even finished my training. Like, there's something about being a fraud there, that I'm sure she feels. And there, with her, I think there's a need for redemption and a need to make things right. Without me knowing the full context of everything that happened with Thrawn in particular and Ezra, like there's a lot that is already being shown and told to me that says her mission is to set something right. But she's also not the best at explaining her emotions. So yeah, she is a bit cold, but I think she's also suffering from main character syndrome, where often the main characters tend to be the most, like, they're the straight man. They're and all of the other, like, Sabine feels very much more vibrant and colorful because that personality is trying to contrast with what's going on with Ahsoka, who has to have this layer of mystery, so we will want to learn more about her, because the show is focused on her in particular. So.
Yeah, and I like, and to that point, I'm glad that they made that pairing with Ahsoka and Sabine, because one, Sabine in Rebels showed no sensitivity to the Force at all. I mean, when Kanan and Ezra were trying, whenever they came across the Darksaber, and Kanan was trying to teach her how to use it, she had no Force sensitivity whatsoever. And also Ahsoka and Sabine really didn't have much relationship at all. This is like, so with them creating this in the story for this show I think what the point you just made really like is right on point there, as far as why Filoni made the decision to have Sabine be her Padawan.
Why?
Because that contrast.
Yeah.
Because Ahsoka has seen stuff. I mean, she's been through the world between worlds where, where Ezra saved her right at the last minute from getting struck down by Darth Vader. I mean, Ahsoka, she died before and was brought back in Clone Wars. And then, and she walked, she was labeled a traitor to the Jedi Order, but of course things were set straight, but then she decided to leave the Jedi Order because of, because she just didn't trust him anymore. So, so that coldness and that aloofness, I think thinking about it more, I mean, it makes sense for why she was this way by this point in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though it was hard to warm up to her as a character as far as like watching this, but in context of what's going on in universe, it makes total sense why she is so like aloof and guarded and, kind of stiff arm with everyone as far as any emotional attachment, because she's seen some shit.
And I think also for you as someone who has seen her through a lot of other stories in context of those stories, there are still some gaps, right?
Yeah.
From what I understand of
Yeah.
her storyline and
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
pieces. So you're also like looking at her and being like, why aren't you answering this and this and this?
Yeah.
I hopefully
Yeah.
this series will do it. Like while for me, I have much bigger gaps, but at the same time, I'm just like, I just met her. I encountered her previously for like 2 episodes, and now I'm meeting her again. And we'll see where this goes, but I'm meeting all these other characters. So I think Filoni is walking a thin line expertly, based on our conversation and our takeaways of this episode. And I think, like, even though nothing crazy happened, I think they are starting this show not necessarily at a high, but as on strong.
Yeah.
Which makes me have confidence that the season will be well executed, because I think it's telling that I have confidence already that there's an end game here.
Yeah.
They are writing knowing where they're going, where sometimes, more often, unfortunately, it is clear to me within the first 2 episodes, the writers had no idea where they wanted to go. They had like a vague idea, but not a clear idea, which leads to a lot of weird story points and like, oh, we spent too much time here, so now we got to get there, and all of these bad writing issues. But I think overall, Ahsoka, very strong start. Looking forward to the rest of the season.
Yeah, because I mean, the second episode in particular really, like I said earlier, these 2 episodes, I'm glad they dropped them together because they do complement each other very well as a unit. And and thinking through the second story, like for example, with the map, seeing, going to another galaxy, and to your point, and her hearing Thrawn. So, you get the Purgle, when you look at whenever they're on the planet there, you see the map, you see the Purgle, like, in the, going in circles around it. So of course the Purgle are clearly, trained, or hyperspace sensitive animals and can travel through. So maybe, Star Wars has always stayed within their galaxy. So now we're going to, this story is going to take us to another galaxy and opens the door to so many possibilities beyond of things that we already know. So that's one thing that we have here. The story with, obviously we talked about Sabine and Ahsoka and Wang giving Sabine that speech to like, hey, get back in the game. You're not a failure. Take the opportunity here. And then, in the second episode too, a lot of people theories about, what is Morrow, is it Ezra, or is it another fallen Jedi, as far as the Inquisitors and stuff. So there's things, there's all, Filoni has really set up nicely everything very well in these first 2 episodes to really, so that whenever we do get the recreation of the scene at the end of this episode that takes us timeline, all the stuff that we're seeing here is basically it's about, 9 years after A New Hope and to the second season of Mandalorian. And so, because we have the recreation of the scene there on Lothal. And then we see Sabine.
Mandalorian took place after, Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, that's 9 years after Battle of Yavin. Yeah.
Okay, so okay. Yeah. I mean, I appreciate you trying to tell me where it was, but I will be honest, you're starting to confuse the shit.
So basically the way where episode 2 of Ahsoka ends is basically, second season of Mandalorian. So everything that we get moving forward is either running concurrently with the third season of Mandalorian, Or they may do some time jumps around here as well.
Yeah, I expect some time jumps if it's only second season, just because it doesn't make sense to me why, considering where we left things with Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Like they're gonna catch up eventually, but
Yes. Yeah.
anyway.
But as a fan of Rebels and seeing them, because I saw the trailer where they recreated the final scene from Rebels in Ahsoka. So just to see it all sort of play out in live action was again another treat. I mean, like, so the bookends of the episodes, whether it was the start of the episode 1 and the end of episode 2, were nice bookends to this story. And as I said, I'm feeling very good about what's to come over the next 6 weeks.
Yep, agreed. All right.